Hare Krishna. We have next Her Grace Brijlata Mataji. Please take over.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, and Hare Krishna, all the devotees on the call. Thank you so much for taking the time to join today. And thank you, Prabhuji and Mataji, if she is there as well, for engaging us in this service of being able to speak about Krishna. Right? My topic for today is the science of the soul. Prabhuji, as I am going to be sharing, I will not be able to see the Zoom. So please call out if there is anything that comes up, or any issues. So as we're going through this topic, we will see, as per Krishna's explanation in Bhagavad Gita, what is the soul? And Krishna will explain what is the characteristics of the soul. Today's presentation is really focused just on the characteristics of the soul. And there are quite a number of them, but I've selected just 9. And for those 9 characteristics, also what are the benefits that we will gain from understanding more about actually ourselves? Because the soul is us, right? And using those benefits to improve on our spiritual progress as well, and overcoming the cycle of birth and death. Okay, so let's dive right in. As we begin Bhagavad Gita, we see that Arjun takes a moment and he starts to prioritize introspection. He takes a moment and he's like, looks at the whole situation, and he gives all of these reasons not to fight, which we have gone over with Vidakta Madhav Prabhu as well. That is the point at which Arjun surrenders to Krishna and he accepts Krishna as his guru. As part of that, Krishna will then start to give us a full explanation. And if you think about it, this is the first point that Krishna starts speaking about, right? He speaks about the soul being us and the characteristics of the soul. So if you think about it, if this is the first thing of all possible topics that Krishna could speak about, this is the first one. So we should understand that this is a very foundational aspect of our philosophy. And the more that we can dive into these characteristics, the better. In verse 2.11, Krishna is telling Arjun, oh, you are lamenting for something that is just not worth lamenting for, right? And it's a fundamental truth. He is revealing that we are not the body, we are the soul. And I know we have heard this so many times, okay? The soul is eternal, the body is material, the soul is everlasting, and the body will eventually be let go. But I want us to think a little bit more about, as we go through life, we quite often think, oh, I am going to die, right? But in actuality, we will just go through this process of death, where just like we can change our garments, we will change our body. But we actually, the soul being eternal, cannot be killed and cannot die. So that is what I want everyone here to really identify with as we're going through this presentation, right? As you look in the mirror, do not relate to what you're seeing. Just think that, okay, I'm going to accept this body just for this time, and I will let go of it. So we often hear this analogy of changing garments. Let's take it one step further. Think sometimes you want to purge from what is in your closet, right? You find that, oh, there's these t-shirts or whatever, and it's like on its last threads, it's time to just give it up. You are not changing before the purge, during the purge, or after the purge. So in the same way, identify with your true nature as we look through these next couple of verses from 2:11 to 2:30, and understand what are the characteristics of the soul. And as we go through it, we will also look at what we can gain. So the first characteristic that Krishna speaks about is in verse 12. He says, never was there a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor all of these kings, and in the future none of us shall cease to be. So what we're pulling from this verse, actually, there's a lot, right? There's a lot that you can take from a verse, but what I'm pulling from here is that the soul is an individual. It is not that the soul in your body and the soul, me, are the same souls. We are different and we are individual souls.
Sharing the screen.
I'm not sure. Am I sharing my screen?
No, Mataji, you are not. I didn't.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize I was not sharing all along. Thank you. There we go. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay. My apologies. I actually didn't realize that that had happened. I should have, checked actually. Sorry about that, everyone. Okay, so what I was saying is that the soul that is in my body and the soul that is in your body, it is not the same soul. So technically, what that also means is that we are all different. And because we are all different, we have different traits, there is never a need to actually compare ourselves with anyone else. Right? Take this example of, like, for example, if you're cooking, are you going to have a chili come up and say, like, oh, how dare you put only one of me in there? It is not like that type of need, actually, because we are individuals. It keeps us away from any kind of pride, any kind of insecurity, any jealousy. It will not make us miserable when we are trying to compare ourselves with each other, because we can realize that we are all different and we are individual souls. The other thing that we can also take away from this is that Krishna says he is existing and we are existing. So he's also saying that we are different. It is not that after death, suddenly we will merge with Krishna, right? So it is better, as we're thinking about life and as we're thinking about enjoyment, it's better to enjoy with Krishna and not try to be Krishna as well. That's another gentle reminder there. The next characteristic is about the soul being indestructible. And I really like this one, because sometimes we get into conversations with people and we think, oh, tell me, what is the thing that you're most afraid of, right? They will always answer, and we will always answer really from that material concept, the association with body. People would typically say things like, I'm afraid of gun violence. I'm afraid of fire. I'm afraid of falling into a pool of water because I don't know how to swim. I'm afraid of a natural disaster. But wait, hang on. Krishna is saying the Atma is indestructible. It's kind of like saying, you can touch my body, but you cannot touch me. Nothing material, no material elements can ever affect the soul. So what do we take away from this? We can become fearless, right? Because we know that nothing can touch us. And when we become fearless, if we feel nothing will affect us, that will make us, propel us to do all that we can in terms of devotional service as well. The next characteristic is that the soul is eternal. In verse 2.13, we have read about how we are continuously changing bodies. Even in this lifetime, we are changing bodies. And we all know that at some point, because we have taken birth, the body will give up and we will have to leave the body. And so that same process will happen to others around us. So think anyone that you may have a personal connection with, or even any animal, or even your plants. You do not need to become overcome with grief. You can actually overcome your lamentation, knowing that the soul is always existing. And I will be very honest, this is something that even I am still learning and I am still internalizing. Like just a few days ago, Govinda Vilas Prabhu and I, we lost one of our ex-colleagues. And the first thing I was thinking about was like, oh, that is sad. And what is going to happen to his family and what is going to happen to his son now? And then I had to catch myself and say, like, wait a sec. Actually, he is still existing. He has changed his bodies. He is eternal. And it is, it's a situation. So we can use this knowledge of the soul is eternal to overcome lamentation. As devotees here, you all have spiritual desires, I know, right? And we also know that spiritual progress is never lost. Because the soul is eternal, we know that at some point, all of our spiritual desires will be fulfilled. We can have that hope. And it is not to say that we should not lose a sense of urgency. Actually, what it really means is we can now use this knowledge to prioritize how we live, right? And really just say, like, just like I'm going to use my car to do something, or I'm going to use, any other object, in the same way, we can remember to use our bodies and our senses in a way that will allow us and set ourselves up for lifetime after lifetime after lifetime of service to Krishna. It is that single-minded focus that we can develop. So make those investments now for the happily ever after that we're actually all really looking for. The next characteristic is about the soul being immovable. The soul is spiritual in nature. Nothing material can move the soul. Actually, in this verse, Krishna is saying so many things about the soul. But one of the points that he makes is that the soul is immovable. What we can take away from this is that we can use that to develop a lot of grit and determination in life. Like sometimes we reach this like low point in life and so many changes happening around us, or somebody comes along and they say something that affects us or whatever. We almost sometimes can be pushed around by others. And yes, that happens. But knowing that the soul is immovable also allows us to understand that we, as a soul, we cannot be pushed around because nothing material can affect us. And with that, we can develop that determination and move forward in our services as well. The next characteristic is that the soul is immeasurable. We learn from verse 2.18 that it is so small and you cannot see it with material eyes. You cannot use any kind of equipment to even see it as well. It is that small, right? The size of the soul is described. But if we think about how big the world is, how big Portland is, how big Oregon is, how big USA is, how big the world is, how big this universe is, and how many other universes there are at higher planets, lower planets, and so forth, right? We really kind of understand what is our true insignificance. Like when we realize our true insignificance, we will become very grounded and we will see ourselves lesser than what we may think we actually are, which is very important. This humility that we will develop is very important for our spiritual growth. We'll start to understand that we're not really in control of anything as well. And that allows us to surrender and to become, and we can aim to become an instrument in Krishna's hands and allow him to do whatever he wants with us in this world. It's not about us, it's about Krishna's wants and Krishna's wills. And one more thing as well, like as we develop this understanding of our insignificance, and as we develop humility, we will start to realize that in actuality, there's no reason for us to think ourselves higher than someone else as well. The next characteristic is that the soul is all-pervading. And there's quite a few points about this one as well. Right, just like in the previous verse where we saw like, okay, the soul is so small and we are really, insignificant. But this tiny little soul essentially powers up our bodies, but it also powers up the body of such a huge, elephant or a huge giraffe. It powers up a plant. And we become also aware, very aware, of all of the souls around us. Just think, souls can exist on the sun planet It can exist in water. There are souls that can exist in fire. There are souls in the air. We become so conscious of the existence of all those other souls in addition to us. Like it is not, we really start to understand it is not just about us as well. And using this, we can become very compassionate towards other living entities. And this level of compassion, it can extend further than like a choice of, okay, I will become vegetarian, right? It actually goes very mental and it's a very emotional connection with others. And using that, you do not need to, like, you will immediately you will stop thinking negatively about others. You will naturally become respectful of others as well. When we are seeing everyone as a soul. And I'll add one more point to this as well, and it's not meant to be a dig at anyone or anything like that, but as devotees, if we're relating to each other as souls, then we do not need to think about where they're coming from in this lifetime, because in this lifetime, I may be, South African and someone else might be from another country. And it's not really important to ask, where are you from, right? As a devotee, if you're relating to each other as a soul, maybe a more appropriate question would be like, tell me about your journey into Krishna consciousness, right? We can take something from that. So, yeah, that's one other lesson that we can learn. The next characteristic is that the soul is unchanging, right? And we know that as we go through life, there's so many changes that happen around us. Like just for me, in my workplace, very recently, our CTO was let go, which has caused a whole ripple effect in my organization. But I can use the understanding that the soul is unchanging, that the soul will be constant no matter what is happening around us, and I can use it to develop freedom from anxiety. And I can use it to adapt to change around me because I know I am not changing. And the same for you as well. No matter what life is throwing at you, you can use this knowledge of the soul being so constant, so unchanging, and know that I don't have to be so anxious about this because I am not changing. The next characteristic is that the soul is invisible. Material science has never been able to prove the existence of the soul. Like we haven't even been able to use the highest powered microscope to be able to see the soul. And so if we cannot see the soul, then what do we have to fall back on? Right? What it really means is that we have to accept this process, right? This process is that we have to understand about the presence of the soul from a higher authority. And in this case, it is Krishna himself, right? And if you think about it, it's actually because we can't see the soul that we have to work on developing faith in Krishna's words and in the words of our Guru. It's not a blind faith. If we think about it, right, we actually really do, we know that we aren't the body. We know that this is not, I'm not my arm, I'm not my leg, or anything like that. We know that. But to develop really, really strong faith it is because we have to rely on something other than our material senses, or our sense of sight in this case. There's a really interesting story that I've come across, and I've added references into the slide deck so we can all like see where it is coming from as well. It's the story about a village that was going through a very long drought for many, many years. And so all the village people came together and they decided to have a prayer meeting and pray to the rain gods for rain. And so they did that. But one girl turned up with an umbrella. Right? And just this kind of very deep faith that we should be aiming to develop, right? Faith in very real things and faith in Krishna's words. The next characteristic is about the soul being inconceivable. This means that just like the soul is invisible from our sense of sight, none of our material senses can be used to conceive the soul. But this is also our impetus to develop purity in order to develop a purified senses or spiritual senses. There was also a really nice story that I came across of some visitor who was a very high-ranking visitor and came to meet Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So as he was told to wait. And then he was told, like, while you're waiting, please can you come and wash pots? So he started washing pots and several hours passed by, right? Eventually, he got to meet Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur and he asked him, okay, what is your question? And he said, actually, all my questions have been answered. So really, how to develop that sense of purity? It is by doing a little bit of seva. Like we can ask a question, we can do a lot of research, but actually we also need to do some seva to purify ourselves, right? And with that little seva, with hearing, being able to purify ourselves, we can take the knowledge that we hear and the knowledge that we gain from our guru, and that knowledge will eventually transform into realizations as well. So this is the final characteristic that I wanted to go over with everyone today. And yeah, I have a summary of all of the characteristics of the soul that we were talking about and what those takeaways are as well. What is the benefit for us if we really internalize what is our true nature? Like as Krishna is describing all of these characteristics, just think he's actually telling us, he's actually reminding us of our true nature. If we cannot, we would find it very hard to identify with ourselves as a soul if we don't know and truly understand the characteristics. Like, what are we like? Right? So that is what we can use as well, all of these benefits to progress in spiritual life as well. We know that the soul eternally wants to be happy. We want to go and we want to be able to serve Krishna. As much as possible, we want to serve Krishna. We want to connect with him. And we do know that we want to overcome this cycle of birth and death. Like there's no point to that. But ultimately, our focus is on bhakti. But how do we practice bhakti practically? We saw in the beginning as well how Arjuna was taking the shelter of Krishna as his guru. And that's what we need to do. Because remember, we're all individuals. So our guru, knowing us as an individual, will be able to guide us appropriately and effectively and practically in this practice of bhakti as well. So I am really looking forward to next week's presentation by Shamlila Mataji, where she will also speak about the importance of accepting a guru as well. And this concludes today's presentation on the characteristics of the soul and what we can take away and benefit from. I just want to add as well, this is the references that I used. Actually, there are so many references that we have in our Vedic literatures. Of course, Krishna's words from Bhagavad Gita. We have a lot of books. We have some articles. We have a very nice film by Yadubara Prabhu as well. Lots of playlists by Gauranga Das Prabhu, Shubhavilas Prabhu. The story that I mentioned about Umbrella of Faith is here as well. And also these 9 characteristics were also covered in a book by Braj Mohan Prabhu, which is called Gita Sutras as well. that is the end of today's presentation. I do not know if we have time for questions, maybe, Prabhuji?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Yes, devotees, please. Anybody has any comments or questions for Mataji? I have several, but I'll wait for others to speak. Okay, I'll share my thoughts or I noted several points, and I really, really liked the presentation. It was extremely powerful. Powerful because it was very straightforward and it came from the heart. That's what I felt. And one thing I would like to say is that your presentation contained very simple examples which are present in everyone's lives. Something happens at work or some situation at home with family members, friends, colleagues, etc. But they were examples from your life. And the way to connect it with Bhagavad Gita makes them so powerful. And what this means is, or this happens, or this occurs for those people who are constantly trying to practice or keep Bhagavad Gita front and center in their lives as they are navigating through these situations at work, family, everything. And they are constantly reminded of the Bhagavad Gita, and then they are able to draw those connections. Wow. And it may be something like some of the connections that you drew, I could say that, oh, this other aspect of Bhagavad Gita also could be connected to this example, or that, or that. But that's not the point. The point is that at that moment when you made that connection with that specific aspect of Bhagavad Gita, whether it is about inconceivability or immeasurability of the soul, how you connected immeasurability to humility, how insignificant we are. I don't know where you took that from. Maybe I missed it from some purports, but I have never seen that connection being made. But it strikes me as like, wow, yeah, that's like, so maybe when you realized it, you were thinking about immeasurability and you made that connection in your life and you shared it with us, and it makes a whole lot of sense to me. And so what I am saying is practice of the instructions leads to realizations. When we keep those instructions front and center in our minds, and we try to practice them, or at least we are reminded of them all the time, and then when events happen in our life and we are able to connect those with events in our life, they are called realizations. And they may be very simple things. It may not have to be something very, very dramatic as, oh, I was going to commit suicide. And then I remembered this verse of Bhagavad Gita. And, that's wonderful that if Bhagavad Gita can, guide us in the most troubled scenarios of our life, but it absolutely gives us the strength to just navigate through simple aspects of our life as well. And they become realizations. And that's what moves people when you share those with them. So thank you. I really, really enjoyed your presentation. And it's not about the presentation was just the facade in the good sense, like the front face. What I think I can see is a lot of practical application behind the scenes, a lot of genuine um, um, keeping Bhagavad Gita within your life. And that was showing at least I could perceive that coming through the tiny window of your 20-minute presentation. And you were speaking from the heart, and I really enjoyed this. And I think true preaching is when we speak from the heart. Simple things move people. And yes, there are more emphatic and more eloquent ways to say things, and those also move people. But yeah, this was a very, very moving example of how you could connect just seemingly unrelated things to this topic of the soul, which usually is very theoretical. It was full of practical things. So thank you for sharing this, and it gives people, at least me, a whole avenue of looking at Bhagavad Gita with a different mindset of how it can apply in our lives.
Rishi, thank you so much. But I will, say again, there's so many references I used. A lot came from a playlist of or a series of lectures by Shubha Vilas Prabhu, where he's really dove into this in so much detail. There are quite a series of lectures, really, and also the book by Braj Mohan Prabhu. Even it is covered in also in a table format as well. Yeah. So those are the two
Okay.
main references, but there's so many. Yes.
Even if I were to take you on your word, you did the effort to at least take it from there, and then all glories to those devotees who came up with these realizations. They have been also, yeah. So yes, this is such a good learning for us as to how to apply Bhagavad Gita in our lives. Yes, Rama Mataji has her hand raised.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Hare Krishna, Mataji. I was wondering, but the presentation was really good. I was wondering about the references, if there is a way to share those links for our own benefit, if possible. That's what I was going to request. Thank you.
Yes, of course, I can do that. Paramakrishna Prabhu, if it is okay, I can PDF the PowerPoint and upload to Google Classroom. And then if you find it is appropriate, you can share whatever content from there is suitable.
Sure, I will be happy to share your presentation just on the WhatsApp group if you send.
Thank you so much.
Anything else anyone wants to share?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Hare Krishna, everybody. Thank you, Mataji. I think Prabhuji already covered, but I just still want to re-emphasize that the practical application of the soul characteristics is amazing, and definitely gives us a perspective how we can use it in our life. So thanks for sharing that.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, happy to share what I have learned from others.
Thank you, Mataji. Nice presentation. One thing I like it, especially when you say, when you treat everyone as a soul, I think that's concluded many things.
Thank you, Sukumar Prabhu.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Brijlata Mataji, for such a nice presentation. And your pictures were also very thoughtful. I really like the picture with no faces. When you said the soul can't be seen. I don't know how you made that or found it on Google, but it was very apt.
Thank you, Prabhuji. I do want to apologize. My slides were truly not the prettiest. They're very rudimentary, and I have a tendency to put far too many words on slides. So please forgive me for that. I didn't have time to cut down.
Thank you. All right. Hare Krishna.